Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the United States and Russia try to revive the Middle East peace process. Israel lends a hand to the victims of the earthquake in Italy and will reveal which drug the Jewish state may start to export. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. Reports continue to surface of behind-the-scenes efforts by the United States and Russia to revive the Middle East peace process, but so far there's little sign of success amid a host of offers. The Jordanian Al-Ghad newspaper is reporting that Washington is pushing for a trilateral peace summit with Israel and the Palestinian Authority. But a senior PLO official has responded that Washington has been informed there will be no talks unless Israel agrees to the PA's demands to release Palestinian prisoners and freeze all settlement construction. The Netanyahu government is said to have welcomed the American initiative but reject any Palestinian preconditions. A separate PLO official close to the negotiations told local media that he never heard of a new U.S. proposal, although he does believe the White House is trying to bypass the French initiative, which is backed by Ramallah but rejected by Jerusalem. Meanwhile, the Palestinians are continuing to demand Israel to attend conferences that both Moscow and Cairo are offering to host. So it appears there's been little progress on either of those diplomatic fronts. Netanyahu has long maintained the only way to break the impasse is to hold direct bilateral talks with the Palestinians, without preconditions. It looks like Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party will be facing war at the election polls because a new poll is indicating that Hamas will secure an overwhelming victory. Public opinion polls conducted by the Arab World Institute for Research and Development indicate that Hamas-affiliated lists will triumph in the upcoming Palestinian Authority elections. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is reportedly being urged to cancel the upcoming elections on October 8th over fear that the PA could lose to Hamas. According to the polls, Fatah is expected to receive 34% of the parliament seats in Judea and Samaria, tied with Hamas at 33%. 9% of the vote is expected to go to independent parties and 4% to other Islamic organizations. 60% of PA voters said they will participate in the elections, and 66% believe the elections will be clean and fair. Yet only 21% believe that the elections will lead to a reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas. Israel is concerned that Hamas will sweep the West Bank voting and ultimately undermine the legitimacy of the Palestinian Authority. Despite concerns that Hamas could make significant gains in the polls, Palestinian officials say there is no intention of postponing the voting. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman is making it clear that he has a different strategy than his predecessors when it comes to dealing with Gaza and the West Bank. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with Jerusalem Post editor Yaakov Katz to find out how Israel will respond to future terror attacks, and Katz claims the days of the Jewish state's muted responses are now over.
Yaakov Katz, editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post and former military reporter. Yesterday, we heard about a couple of rockets falling in Sderot harmlessly. Nobody was injured. We're used to kind of a tit-for-tat Israeli response. We send some bombers into Gaza, hit a couple of sites, don't do much damage, and then quiet is restored for another few months. This morning, we woke up to the news that there was pretty massive bombing in areas of Gaza where this rocket was fired from. Is it a new policy of Defense Minister Lieberman?
Well, I think you're right that usually we used to see one rocket that's launched at Israel, and then Israel fires and launches something at the same level, let's say, just to send a message that we don't let these things happen quietly. This time we saw a more wider response. Possibly you could say that it's even disproportionate to one rocket landing, and dozens of targets struck in overnight by the Israel Air Force. On the other hand, I think that it does fit into Avigdor Lieberman's new policy as defense minister. He recently unveiled this new plan. He called it the carrot and stick plan to the Palestinian places or villages or towns or cities which are good to Israel.
Now you're turning to the West Bank.
Well, that's in the West Bank, but it fits also to Gaza, where there's no terror. There'll be rewarded with economic benefits, with building permits, etc. But places or towns or villages where terror emanates from, those will be punished. And I think we're seeing the same thing in Gaza. As long as Gaza is good and quiet and the ceasefire is maintained, Israel will do the same. But if there's one rocket, even one, that violates that quiet, Avigdor Lieberman and the IDF will strike back fiercely.
It sounds more like how you train your dog rather than how you try to make peace with a neighbor.
Well, I think with Hamas, particularly in Gaza, I don't know that there is a peace to be spoken about at the moment. I think that with Hamas in Gaza, unfortunately for the time being, until they change their ways, we're still talking about that violence does need to be met by violence. And the only language, unfortunately, that Hamas understands in Gaza is one of force. And we've seen, for example, that 2 years after Operation Protective Edge in the summer of 2014, the quiet has maintained itself because they did get sustain a heavy blow during that war over the summer 2 years ago. But you need to maintain that. Deterrence is something, it's like mowing a lawn. Every once in a while you need to go in and trim the grass. So same thing here, is that if they violate that ceasefire and they violate the quiet, you might need to respond disproportionately to get them to realize it's not even worth one rocket because of the response that Israel will bring their way.
Well, they're not firing the rockets. It's more radical Islamic groups. And isn't there a danger of things spiraling out of control to another Gaza war?
You know, when saying that it's a radical Salafi group that fires out of Gaza and it's not Hamas, it's like saying in Israel it's a radical police officer and it's not the Israel police. This is a country in Israel, and we take responsibility like any democratic country for what happens inside. And I think Hamas has a very strong grip on what happens inside the Gaza Strip. They can stop rocket fire if they want. They can rein in some of these more radical groups. It would mean possibly having to clash with them, but they have that capability. It's their decision if they want to do it or not. So ultimately, they are the final address on what happens.
And that new policy in the West Bank of Lieberman's, the carrot and stick policy, as you called it, dealing with the villages directly rather than dealing with the Palestinian Authority, is that a non-starter, or is it actually a clever idea of divide and conquer?
Well, I think on the one hand, there's something nice about the fact that we're realizing inside the Israeli government, or Lieberman at least is, that peace is not obtained just from top down, by talking leaders across the table from leaders and signing agreements. We've seen that that may make peace between governments, but doesn't make peace between peoples. So doing something also bottom up, by engaging with villagers, engaging with academics, intellectuals, businessmen, is something that I think we should look at favorably. On the other hand, if it's supposed to be just on its own as an alternate route for achieving peace, we know that it can't work on its own. You do need agreements between governments. So it seems like everyone is recognizing the fact that there is no peace process, there is no deal that's to be had in the near future. So we're just kind of dribbling the ball and saying, okay, we'll do this or we'll do that. Now we'll talk to villagers or we'll talk to these people. It sounds nice on paper. Will it really do anything to bring about a peace solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? I'm doubtful.
Dribbling the ball, eventually you have to shoot. Yaakov Katz, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Whenever and wherever disaster strikes across the world, Israel and the Jewish community always offer help. And the devastating August 24th earthquake in Italy was no different. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu immediately offered humanitarian aid after the 6.2 magnitude quake struck, and a 20-member team from IsraAid was dispatched within 24 hours. The group has been distributing food, water, and other supplies while building temporary housing camps for the survivors. They're not only providing grief counseling to families of the 290 people who died in the natural disaster, but they're also offering help to Italian rescue team members suffering from fatigue and acute stress. Because Italian officials passed on Jerusalem's offer to send military teams, IsraAid is the only foreign humanitarian, nonprofit, and non-governmental aid organization working on the ground in central Italy. And that's not all. The Union of Italian Jewish Communities and the Jewish Community of Rome have been initiating blood drives collecting funds and material for relief operations and have opened a special bank account for earthquake relief donations. The National Museum of Italian Judaism and the Shoah joined dozens of other state museums and cultural sites by dedicating all of its proceeds from yesterday's visits to recovery efforts. Joining us now on the phone is Shachar Zahavi, the founder and CEO of the Israeli organization IsraAid, which provides life-saving disaster relief for those in need around the world. Hello, Shachar.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I understand that an IsraAid team is already on the ground in Italy. What is the situation right now?
Well, the situation there are still aftershocks. Most of the bodies have been pulled out of rubble, and now the main focus is to actually provide those who lost their homes with to provide them with temporary shelters until the government understands how better to deal with them on a long-term basis.
And what type of support is Italy going to need in the coming days and months? I understand that you're also providing mental health care as well.
Yeah, so Israel is actually, in addition to humanitarian aid, helping distribute food and cooking and providing blankets and stuff like that. What we do is we actually brought we have three Israeli, Italian, and Israelis who made Aliyah from Italy, psychologists to Italy, and what we're doing is we're providing first responders with counseling on how to better equip and deal with what they went through emotionally. And another thing that we've been doing is actually working with grieving families who lost one of their members. So we work with the various families who lost their members, and we're also providing counseling to the first responders.
Yeah, because I mean, this is going to have some very long-term effects on the people of Italy. Has Italy ever seen an earthquake like this? Has Israel ever been in Italy for an event similar to this?
No, we've never been to Italy for an event like this. About a year or a year and a half ago, there was a quake, but it was less. The damage was far by less than it was now.
Well, good job for all the hard work that you guys are doing on the ground, and we can only hope that Italy is able to recover to the best of its ability. Thank you, Shachar.
Bye. Take care.
Take care. Israel has long been at the forefront of medical marijuana research, and now it looks like the Jewish state will begin exporting medical marijuana abroad. The move comes just weeks after the government approved measures to make medical cannabis more accessible to patients. Israel's agriculture ministry has now set up specific areas for research and development of medical cannabis, and medical marijuana will now be more readily available to over 23,000 patients throughout the country. The Israeli-grown cannabis will even be exported abroad. Health Minister Yaakov Litzman has proposed that the government remove a limit on the number of approved cannabis growers and help more doctors be approved to issue medical marijuana prescriptions. In the long run, the health ministry may even make cannabis available in local pharmacies. In recent months, the Justice Ministry began exploring the possibility of decriminalizing the use of soft drugs like marijuana. Those using the drugs would be fined up to $390, but would not be charged with criminal activity. In the last couple of days, we've witnessed escalating tensions between the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian population in Nablus. The issue comes just months before the Palestinian elections, and polls indicate that Hamas may have an overwhelming victory. Joining us now in the studio is Dr. Mordechai Kedar with The Scoop. Thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
All right, so what is going on here, and why is this happening?
Well, first of all, we have to understand the basic situation in the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria. The Palestinian Authority is viewed by the vast majority of the people as a regime, not as a leadership. A regime just like Mubarak was in Egypt, like Ben Ali was in Tunisia, hated, corrupt, and cruel. And people accumulate weapons, not against Israel, but against the state, as we see definitely in the old part of the city of Nablus. Now what happened is that the security organizations of the PA assaulted on a place in the old city of Nablus in order to confiscate weapons. So they shot the people shot the security people and killed 2 of them. So the PA authorities chased those who killed them, and they caught 1 of them, and they actually killed him by beating him in jail. So altogether, so far, 5 people got killed, and I'm talking about something which started in August 18, like 11 days ago, and continued for at least a week. Means it's an ongoing clashes and demonstrations and riots in the streets, which the police had to use force in order to disperse. And this actually reminding us what happened in the Arab Spring 5.5 years ago. What started in Egypt, started in Tunisia, in Libya. And because the basic situation in the PA is exactly the same. A regime which is viewed as illegitimate was nominated by Israel or by others, sponsored by the Americans and the Europeans, corrupt to its teeth, and maintains law and order by force, just like standard Arab state. And in my view, it's only a matter of time. Maybe the elections will accelerate some processes because of the possibility that Hamas will take over. But definitely we have to take in account that a Palestinian state will turn into another chaos, just like Syria, because the situation in the PA is more or less as it was in Syria prior to the Arab Spring, which erupted in March 2011. So this is actually what we see in the West Bank, and we should not be surprised if riots are erupting in the West Bank, in Nablus, in other places. And this is why the only solution, in my view, is the 8-state solution, the Emirate solution, which is based on the sociology, not on politics, to create Emirates in the cities for the families, not imposed by others. Look, Abu Mazen was not born in the West Bank. He was born in Sfat, in the north. He is viewed as illegitimate. His forces were brought from Tunisia by Israel. They are viewed as illegitimate. And this is the core problem of the PA, just as it was in Egypt and in Tunisia, in Syria and other places.
Why is there not major media coverage about this happening?
Because the media would not like to expose the real problems of the PA, because the PA is the pampered baby of the world media, the world politicians. They see it as kind of a nice, cute, good state which will emerge by agreements with Israel and so forth, and peace will reign over the Middle East once you have a Palestinian state. They don't understand that the core problems of the whole Arab world are also in the PA, and this is why the only solution is to follow the Emirate paradigm rather than the state paradigm, which failed all over the Middle East. Only the Emirate, which is based on the Hamulas, on the family, on the clans, which live in those places. I'm talking about Nablus and Hebron and Jericho and Ramallah. Only those can control themselves, because everybody who comes from outside is viewed as illegitimate and will eventually come to clash with the population.
Now, let's turn a little bit more to the elections and what's happening right now on the ground. Obviously, there are polls that have just come out saying that Hamas may have an overwhelming victory against the Palestinian Authority. How is this conflict, what we're witnessing happening in Nablus, going to affect that, if at all?
Definitely. People might vote for Hamas because of two reasons. First of all, there are those who sympathize with Hamas initially, and they will vote for Hamas anyway. But there are many who will vote for Hamas in order to punish the PA, means against the PA by voting Hamas, voting against. And this might very possibly Hamas might grab the majority, as they did already. The last elections for the PA Legislative Council was in January 2006, 10 years ago, a bit more. And until this very day, Hamas have the majority of the seats of this Legislative Council.
What
It
does that
can repeat
mean, though?
itself.
I mean, what does that mean? What kind of influence will that have on Israel if we see this victory from Hamas? Will there be a change? I mean,
It means that we establish a Palestinian state which will become another Hamastan, another terror state. Show me another state in the world which will allow it. Another terror state being established right on its border. This is something which no state would tolerate. Israel should also not tolerate such a thing.
So what role should Israel be playing in these elections, if any at all? Should Israel be getting involved?
Abolishing the PA, which was created by sin, and establishing 8 emirates. One in Gaza already is an emirate, and another one in Hebron, Ramallah, Jericho, Tulkarem, Nablus, Kalkilia, and Jenin, in the cities of the so-called West Bank, while Israel should remain in the rural areas, offer citizenship to the villagers, and those cities should be independent from Israel, from anyone else. And the clans of these cities should control their own life, just like in Dubai, just like in Abu Dhabi, just like in Kuwait, Qatar, because this is the only paradigm which works in the Gulf and here. Why? Because it's based on the sociology, of the local sociology, not on foreigners which are who are brought by other parties, like Israel this time, in order to control the people for others.
Thank you so much for coming in,
A
Dr.
pleasure. And if you want to see it online, www.palestinianemirates.com.
All right, guys, turning now to a heartwarming story out of Havertown, Pennsylvania. A Jewish woman from this small suburban town woke up last week to a disturbing sight, a swastika spray painted on her trash bin. Esther Cohen-Eskin was in shock, but instead of just going into mourning, she decided to use her own artistic skills to turn the tragedy into a teaching moment. Esther decided to paint over the swastika with flowers, and then she stuck letters in mailboxes around town asking her neighbors to paint their trash bins as well. Every neighbor was directed to first paint a swastika and then to cover it with images of love and peace. It turns out her neighbors weren't the only ones who participated. Strangers from other countries even got a hold of the story online and painted their own garbage cans with flowers, hearts, birds, and butterflies. Esther says the experience gave her a whole new reassurance in humanity after having been targeted for her Jewish identity. Here at ILTV, the story certainly gave us hope for the future. Women everywhere have long protested that they aren't paid the same as their male counterparts for the same amount of work. And now some of the world's most famous Jewish actors are bearing witness to Hollywood's wage gap. Forbes has just published its 2016 list of the highest paid actors and actresses in Hollywood. The list not only exposes a wide disparity in salaries between the genders, it even shows that male performers with less star power than their dazzling female colleagues still take home more cash. This is particularly clear when checking out how much the 3 Jewish celebrities on the Forbes survey made. Adam Sandler, for example, is only ranked as the 12th highest paid male actor, and he still earns a whopping $30 million each year. Now that's about 3 times more than Mila Kunis, who's the 9th highest paid actress and deposits annual earnings of $11 million. Sandler even out-earned the dazzling Jewess Scarlett Johansson, who's 3rd on the women's list and was paid $25 million. By the way, the world's highest paid actress is Jennifer Lawrence, who's not Jewish, and she earned $46 million this past year, which is still only 71% of what the highest paid male, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, did, at $64.5 million. And that's not all. The females not only make less, they also appear less on the screen. Another recent study shows that men receive over 71% of all speaking roles in films produced by the top 10 media companies. It's time for our segment Today in History. 119 years ago to date, the first Zionist Congress was convened by Theodor Herzl, the founder of the modern Zionist movement. The event in Basel, Switzerland was one of the most important yet unexpected convocations in modern Jewish history. Against all odds, Herzl had Jews gather from 24 different countries across the globe. The Congress adopted a document known as the Basel Program, which declared that Zionism's task is to secure a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine. The Congress even adopted the Hatikva as its anthem, which is now the national anthem of the State of Israel. On September 3rd of the same year, in 1897, Theodor Herzl wrote in his diary, "At Basel, I founded the Jewish state. If I said this out loud today, I would be answered by universal laughter. Perhaps in 5 years, and certainly in 50, everyone will know it." It turns out his prediction came true in 1947, just a few months months after his 50-year prediction, the UN approved the partition of Palestine, which gave birth to the State of Israel. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Today we learned that 119 years ago to date, the first ever Zionist Congress was convened, where almost 200 Jews from around the world came together on a mission to create a Jewish state. So today's word is Medina, which means state in Hebrew. Israelis like to refer to Israel as Medinat Israel, or the State of Israel, because here in Israel, the state is one of the largest parts of an Israeli's identity. Every man and woman serves in the army as their obligation to the Medina, and as a result, there's a lot of deeply rooted patriotism in Israel. After all, the Israeli state is home, even if it's not perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tuesday should be mostly sunny with a high of 85 degrees. The clouds are expected to come out on Wednesday, but the temperature will stay the same. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.79 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at ILTV.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.